Today we're talking about kinship or resource licensing.
The conversation starts now.
Only on Rob and Tristan's Foster Life. November the 15th, here on Rob and Tristan's Foster Life. I'm Rob.
And I'm Tristan. And thank goodness it's Friday.
And then it's Friday. And we have Cindy on the show with us. Cindy is our expert guest. She was a caseworker for many, many years. And so she kind of keeps us in line and makes sure that we know what's going on. So you got big plans for the weekend?
Not much. I've got to rake some leaves, but that's about it.
Rake some leaves? Well, you act like it's like November or something around
weather
here.
Permitting, anyway.
Oh my goodness, it has been cold in Missouri this
might
week.
Be blowing snow.
Yeah, we had snow and ice on Monday, and it wasn't expected. And actually, schools around here were closed, and so that always makes for a fun beginning of the week, because for me that means that I had 8 home instead of having 3 home.
Yeah.
And so that makes the house a little bit more wilder. And what people don't understand too, when you have a big family like ours, that's 3 more big meals that you have to plan for and cook and make sure you have stuff for and all that. So that storm was not expected at all. So, Cindy, what is in the news today?
Well, we heard a kind of disturbing story about a Florida foster mom.
Oh, yeah.
Who was arrested in an adoption scheme. So what she allegedly did was she sent her foster child to another state in a pre-adoptive sense, and then she would bring the foster child back when it was time for the caseworker to come and visit with the child, and then she would send him back. And then this adopted family started getting frustrated because they weren't making progress on their adoption process.
And the adoptive family wasn't even in Florida, right?
No, they were in another state.
Ohio.
Ohio.
But I think they were paying for the plane rides back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, for this little girl, the family in Ohio. So they not only had their hopes up that they were going to get an adopter, but they were paying travel expenses.
Right.
And so I guess they just got fed up and
they ended up calling the authorities in Florida and reporting this foster mom. They didn't even know what they were reporting at first.
Right.
And then as the story unfolds, it come to find out she was in this scheme to really it was extortion. It was money driven.
Yeah.
And so she was arrested, and
her bond was set at like $20,000.
yeah, very minimal.
She collected $4,000 in maintenance payments at the time. And what she would do is, right before the worker would come to her house to do her monthly check, she'd just make sure that the baby was back by then. So
Yeah, very sad story.
yeah, and it's stories like that that I don't like, because it kind of gives the foster community a bad name. But not all foster families are like that.
Right.
But also, we talk about these stories because we want people to be aware that if something is kind of fishy and doesn't seem right, always go and check and make sure that things are going in the right direction. When we come back today, we're going to talk about resource licensing and relative placements right here on Rob and Tristan's
Foster Life.
get that bug crap that's going around. All my kids have
Getting
had it.
excited for the weekend, I think.
Oh, and Katie, our new partner, she's had that crap and been on here and stuff, and so I guess she passed the hacking crap off. So, but today we're talking about kinship and resource licensing, and that is different in some sense compared to traditional foster parent licensing. And so we just kind of wanted to go over that. So first of all, Cindy, what is kinship or resource licensing?
Well, kinship is a little confusing to most people because most people think of kinship like your kin, your relative, but that's not necessarily what kinship is. Kinship means that there's a relationship with the child. And really in our area, workers have kind of got away from using the terminology kinship, and now they're going to either relative or resource homes. So that helps clear up a little bit of that terminology.
Well, even if you say relative, that sounds like, you know, if a school teacher thinks of it, it's not really relative. So I can understand why they use the resource home.
So in our area, and it's different across our state and different across the United States. So I think that is part of the confusion too, is that there's not consistency in the licensing. So in our area, they can go ahead and place the child, a worker can go ahead and place the child in your home after background checks and a walkthrough of your home. And then licensing and training can be done as an ongoing process, as opposed to doing that training prior to. So I think that that's a little confusing because it's just so inconsistent.
The resource placements that I've heard of is sometimes a school teacher, sometimes it's been a pastor at the church, or it's been another family at a church that they attend and they know. Sometimes it's been a police officer. We had a story of a police officer in New York, and these kids went to his gym every week that he went to, and he had built a relationship with them, so when they came into care, he went and took those boys in. Sometimes it's a nurse or a doctor that knows the kids real well and has a relationship with them. Or it could be a grandparent or an aunt or uncle. You guys did a kinship placement in your home when you were growing up.
My cousins,
So Grayson is in the studio, and I guess he's trying to charm in. He's 2, so he's telling us how it's running today. He's telling me he's done with the sucker. So gotta be quiet there, buddy. So anyway, the kinship, you know, it can be a lot of different things. But I think the thing that's confusing is how are they getting their training for, you know, like a traditional home, you know, because I felt like we had never fostered before, and we went and got the training, but we still were really not prepared. And so it seems kind of weird not having that training.
I think that's part of the issue, is that not having that training, you know, if it's a family member, you might have known the child for some time, or their whole life maybe, but that doesn't always prepare you for trauma, or for, you know, addiction, or behaviors that come along with taking in a child in your home. So just because you know that child doesn't mean you're prepared for some of that.
It's almost like we may be placing them there almost too quickly, to me.
Yeah, and I think that is a really scary scenario that you're setting up. The flip side of that is that they can be placed with a family member, and that's always, you know, always an option, and always a good option to explore. The other side of that is, you know, if that placement doesn't work, then are we there as a caseworker, as a team, to provide support and training to that family so that that placement doesn't disrupt.
I think the thing that I've seen, one of our sons was a resource placement, and he went and lived with his best friend's family, but they weren't prepared for him. But the state situation, we were just talking with him about this last night. So the situation with the state was, if we don't put him with this family, there's not another family that's going to take him because he was older and they had called every place. So then they were going to put him into a residential facility. And really, by law, you're not supposed to just put kids in residential facilities because you can't find a placement. But that's what they were going to end up doing with him. And so they put him in this home, and he wasn't a bad kid. He was a runner. Anytime there was conflict, he would run. And they didn't have a lot of problems with him. He's older now. But he ran away, and he ended up going to residential. And basically at his residential facility, they didn't really even have a plan for him because he didn't have a lot of issues. But he kind of just did his time in residential until he turned 18. So I see the other side of the coin where they're thinking, well, I don't have anybody to place them with. We've called all the foster homes, and this teacher is willing to take him or her. And so I guess that's better than sending them to residential. So I can really see both sides of the coin there. It's just hard to determine what to do.
Yeah, it's just a touchy kind of area to navigate through because you want them to be trained and prepared. You want every placement to be trained and prepared. But are we ever prepared? I mean, like you said, you and Ethan went through extensive training and you weren't prepared for some of the things that you saw.
Well, and I'm wondering, in some states, how strict are we at getting those parents through the training as quickly as possible if we're just placing this kid here? I mean, is this going to be where every single day they're in a class and being trained, or are we just going to, oh yeah, you learn as you go?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is you learn as you go.
Right. And I feel like if we're going to be, not that I'm against kids going to family or somebody that they know, but if we're going to be placing that kid there, I mean, we need to be on top of the training because there's going to be things that come up that they're not going to know.
And make sure that they have as many resources available as possible because they're just kind of taking them before they go through the training. When we come back, we're going to continue the conversation right here. Today we've been talking about resource placement, or some people call it kinship placement. And I think the biggest thing that I can see is as a traditional foster home, we need lots of resources. And I would think that some of our resource homes fear that if they use too many resources that they're going to come take the kids away. Is that true?
Well, and I think that is especially true in a relative home because, you run the risk of people feeling like, well, if I ask for help, they're going to remove my nephew or my grandson or, and that's just not the case. We want to provide resources and we don't always know what's going on in the home until it's brought to our attention. So I would just encourage those resource homes, those relative homes to reach out and ask for help.
If you want their antennas to go up with the team, don't use resources.
Right.
If you're not using resources, the team's going to be very concerned and very worried about the placement. So your job is to tap into those resources, and the team is going to be happier with that placement because they're going to say, okay, they're using resources for their behaviors, or they're dealing with the trauma that they've went through. They're working with the neglect. They're working with these different things. And so it's quite the opposite in every situation that I've been in.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's difficult for resource and relative homes is navigating through the reunification process.
Yep.
Because we want to continue to work with those bio families and until we have exhausted all those opportunities. And sometimes that's really hard for family members to work with the bio families. And you would think that would almost be in reverse, but the boundaries get a little skewed.
I see this a lot with siblings and parents. And what happens is like, say if Tristan's my brother and our kids got taken away and they went to live with Tristan, well, Tristan falls in love with them and he likes having them in his home and stuff. And so then he's almost doesn't want them to come back with me. So it causes us to butt heads, and it's not healthy for the kids as well. So if you are a resource home, you got to kind of think that future through, because you don't want to cause more hurt and confusion.
Not
and
only with the family, but
trauma.
the child as well.
Yeah. By butt heads, because that's going to affect the children as well too.
Yeah, and I think it's real important as the resource home or the relative home or any home, but to have those lines of communication open with your team, because say it's a visit and you're supervising a visit and the visit goes not so well, and then you have to report on the parent. In this scenario that you just set up, then you would have to report on Tristan, or no, Tristan would have to report on you for not doing what you need to do in the visits, and it just becomes pretty clouded. And so just keep those lines of communication open with your team. That's the best option always.
Yeah, and I'm just giving my advice, but I would say if you are doing a resource placement, it's probably not real good to supervise those visits.
Yeah.
You probably should get somebody else to do that. And even I supervise visits for my families, but man, you have to really walk a thin line because you already have the kids in your home, and you don't want it to seem like you're conflict of interest type thing and stuff. And so we've just really gotten to the point where we just, to avoid the stress and stuff, we just use regular people that
Parent services.
the parent services that supervise the visits, just so that, and also too, I've had the parents come to do a supervised visits like to our home, and then they didn't want to leave because they feel like, oh well, they have our kids and they're being nice to us, so I'll just ask them if I can stay for dinner. Well, no, you still got to leave at the right time and stuff. And so it just makes it easier for you. But some of you, I mean, I wouldn't say that I wouldn't supervise our kids' visits, but you have to really be careful and know how to walk that line with them. When we come back today, we're going to wrap up talking about kinship and resource licensing. To Rob and Tristan's Foster Life. Today we're talking about kinship place. One thing that I was thinking about at the commercial, we have 450, almost 500,000 kids in foster care in the United States. And I don't want anybody to get discouraged about taking a child in. You might be a teacher that's watching and you know that little Ben in your class might get taken away, and that would be a good fit in your home. But what I think the reason why I wanted to open this conversation is to help you prepare to know kind of that it's a different journey than it is for a traditional foster home. And so just be prepared that the roads aren't always the same when you do resource placements in your home. And I don't want anybody, never want anybody to be discouraged or not want to do this. It's an amazing job. Not everybody's cut out to do it. And there's days. I mean, when they were all home on Tuesday and the snow was flying and the ice and everything, and they were Their little adrenaline was just through the roof, and everybody was all in the house. It was that was a tough day, but most days it's a wonderful job, but not everybody's cut out to do it. So Tristan, do you have any good news for us today?
I do.
Okay, what's the good news?
It has something to do with the U.S. Postal Service.
Oh,
And
okay.
they have created a healing PTSD stamp. So
Ah.
basically what they'll do is sell that stamp
Yeah.
and it'll raise money for PTSD
Yep.
victims.
And a lot of people, so when we think of PTSD, a lot of times we think of military men and women, and we just celebrated Veterans Day on Monday. And so a lot of times that's automatically where people's minds go. But we have a lot of different things. Car accidents can cause PTSD. Trauma that kids have been through in their home can cause PTSD. Even the death, so you could have a death of a parent in a home where the family was actually a very healthy family, but just that experience of the kids being a part of that, if they died in the home or they were with them when they died, can cause PTSD. I suffered PTSD after I went to Haiti after the earthquake because we saw so much trauma and loss and disaster there, and the surroundings were just so unimaginable. And so I kind of suffered with that. I'm not kind of, I did suffer with that when I came back, and I had to go get help with that because so PTSD, it's
very broad.
Yeah, it's broad, and it affects a lot of people in our world, and I think that's an awesome cause to get behind. And most of the kids that we've taken in, except for our littles, have some kind of PTSD. So I would say from our 7-year-old on up. And so I think it's good to raise awareness and to get as much information as we can and see how we deal with that and work with that. Mental illness is an illness. And we talk about that a lot on the show. And when I had colon cancer, I had to go get some counseling because I had a colostomy bag and I was really depressed. And my counselor kind of explained it to me this way: when you got colon cancer, we didn't shun you away and say, oh, they're just full of it and everything. He said, we got you help and your people were around you. And that's how we need to start thinking more about mental illness. And I hope that by raising money for PTSD and some of those mental illnesses, people will understand that it really is an illness, and we need to try to be more supportive and get them the right help that they need. Just like a cancer patient, you wouldn't get cancer and then not go get your chemotherapy and your radiation and all your stuff. You would go take care of it. Well, that's what we need to do with mental illness.
And just like cancer doesn't have boundaries with age or socioeconomic status or any of that, neither does mental illness.
Right. So what are we going to be talking about on Monday?
We are going to talk about identifying signs of drug use in adolescents and teens.
Oh, that should be good. We'll be back on Monday to talk about drug use.
Help support Foster TV. Go to fostertv.net and make a donation today. Foster TV's My Story is a HEDFRA production. Only on Foster TV.